So we're trying to do it again. We
Take
did this
two.
once before, and it didn't really go well.
Well, it went fine. It was the recording, if I remember correctly.
So technically, it went terrible, but
Okay.
we had a great conversation.
we did great.
But only you and I will ever hear it. There's so much background noise.
I never even got to hear it. I was just there for it.
I tried to clean up the audio on it. It was an impossible task.
Yeah.
So here we are. We're doing it again. The Hive 2.0, episode 8. Myself, Brian Wright, with I don't know if I'm going to call you good friend yet. I'm just going to say my friend and training partner,
Okay.
John Silberman.
Pleasure.
I couldn't say good. It was just.
No, I mean,
I felt like that would have been creepy.
No, you made it
Because
so
you were
much
like
weirder than
staring
it
at me
needed to.
too. You were like staring at me, then it got weird. So
You're a person that I'm talking to that's sitting across from me. It would be weird if I was just looking away the whole time, but yeah, you made it way stranger than that. Good friend. Yeah, maybe by the end of this, we'll.
I think we have ground to cover here. I think we gotta. I think we gotta bridge that gap.
What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. What should we talk about? What do you want to talk about? Honestly, I do want to talk about stuff. I'm actually just being an asshole right now because I just came off the mat and I'm like just trying to get my feet back under me. So, how long have you been in the gym now?
Your gym?
Yes.
2.5 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. Time's freaking flying, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you're an interesting individual for us because you have one of those jobs that I think a lot of people would look at as kind of the dream scenario because you work in that mythical place known as Hollywood at times.
Sure.
So why don't you just explain what you do, and then we'll talk about how we came together and stuff.
Well, I'm a writer. I write. I've written for a lot of TV shows.
What's the biggest show you've worked on?
The most well-known show that I wrote for was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I wrote for 3 seasons of Sunny, and I also. Power just go out?
What's the
Okay.
matter?
Oh. What is that a.
Well, what kind of difficulty do we call that? I don't know. Quick technical difficulty. All right, so we're back.
Yes. So I do movies. More recently, I've gotten more into doing movies.
That's great.
Yeah.
How do you get into that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways.
Were you always interested in writing or writing for entertainment? Was there ever like you were gonna? I don't know. Writing comes in a lot of forms. What made you go to this format?
I don't know. I started thinking of like tinkering a little bit in high school and college and writing comedy. I've done all comedy. And I don't know.
Were you writing comedy for like sketch comedy? Like what were you writing for?
Yeah, but in in college I was writing sketch comedy. I went to Indiana University, and there
what an amazing place.
I mean,
a lot of corn,
plenty of corn, but the actual town of Bloomington is great. It's a great place to go to college. It feels like a different part of Indiana. It doesn't feel. Yeah. I mean, anyway. So I wrote for this. I took a class that was called "Slow Children at Play." Was actually the comedy group.
Yeah.
Apparently, I don't know if they have had to change that. There's been some backlash about the name of the.
I don't think in 2024 that would go well. They probably don't have a lot of social media accounts.
I don't know, but anyway, we started doing sketch comedy. I wrote some sketches, and it was the first time I ever wrote with like a deadline.
Are you in college to do that?
No. Not Indiana is not.
So what are you in college for?
I was in college to go to I don't know. So I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do.
Was it liberal arts? Or
yeah, I ended up getting majoring in telecommunications. So within the telecommunications major, I was able to focus on some of the arts.
I gotta throw in there too. You have a twin brother who's your writing partner.
He is.
Did he go to college with you?
No, that would be too adorable.
Where'd he go to college?
He went to University of Maryland.
So you guys came together after?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, actually, our story of us becoming
That's really interesting. I didn't know that part.
we never intended to be writing partner. We've always kind of shied away from any of the attention that we'd get from being twins. We didn't think it was cool or interesting at all.
And you are identical twins.
We're identical twins. And we always thought it was incredibly hacky to dress the same, or we didn't want the attention for that. We wanted
to be yourselves. You don't want to be the individuals, twin brothers.
Which is so difficult because you, as an identical twin, you have a lot of the same interests. You might order the same thing at a fucking restaurant,
and everyone's like, "Oh, look!"
Yeah, every single time. If you and I ordered the same thing, no one would care.
No one would care. But
if we do it,
that must be like the psychic bond, bro.
Giggles. Oh, and then people come up to you. Anyway, it's like you're a celebrity in the way people in public will just come up to you and talk to you, but they don't give a shit about you. They'll they're, for the first time, they can try to be comedians, and they'll be like, "Hey, does it you feel it when I hit you?" And then he'll hit you, and you're like, "You're a stranger. You're hitting me. It's what the fuck is happening?"
We're not voodoo dolls, dickhead.
So there was a writer's strike back in 2007, 2008, and Josh at the time was an assistant to the head writer on 30 Rock.
How did he get that job?
He got that job. He had just finished working as an assistant on Will and Grace. That show ended. He just made some calls, and he spoke to someone who was Tina Fey's assistant, and he ended up getting an interview and got the job. Yeah, so then he was in New York for like 4 years. But so the strike happens. I go back to New York because I was, I think, unemployed. No, the job, I was an assistant as well. My job was put on hold for a little bit.
Who were you an assistant to?
I was an assistant to a writer named Will Calhoun, who was a writer for Friends and a bunch of other shows.
Yeah, I know that name.
He's a great guy. So I went back to New York and hung out in New York, and we wrote this manuscript that when Josh and I drove out to California together in
so cute. You two in a car? Cute. Was it a small car too?
It was my Acura Integra.
If it was a Mini Cooper, it'd have been amazing.
Oh my god!
The two of you in a Mini Cooper going cross country.
So
that's like a Wes Anderson movie.
It's too much. So when we were on that drive, we just started writing down a lot of ideas of all these things that make basically the perspective of being an identical twin from people who are kind of embittered about it, and we turned that into a manuscript. It was short stories and sketches, and then we wrote it. We cold called a bunch of management companies to sell a book, and we got very close to actually selling this book. Ultimately, we didn't sell it, but we adapted that into a pilot called Bitterson's Birth, which we wrote and immediately got attention for that and sold that very quickly. And
How old are you?
I'm 27.
That's fucking amazing.
And we got an agent, and then we sold the pilot, and then suddenly Josh and I, we never intended to be writing partners. It was like too much. Even though we have the same interests, so we're both writers, it ended up working out, and then we worked on a bunch of shows together, and it was like
that's wild.
Yeah, and now we do everything. We write everything together.
How much time do you physically spend together?
I mean, it's a little more difficult these days because, he has his kid and I have my kid. So, but today we got together because we're working on a movie and talked.
Does technology help you with that? So it's like now it's just like you're emailing back and forth working on.
Oh, so much. We use Google Docs a lot for when we're trying to come up with a break a story.
So as twins, how much of the time do you find that you guys are on the same page when you're writing? No pun intended. I mean it that way. But like do you guys struggle with ideas together, or do you have like mindsets and you're like, oh, okay? Is it kind of like you're finishing each other's sentences without too much arguments?
I think the
you have different sense of humor.
No, I think that's what helps is that we have a very similar sensibility.
Gotcha.
So it's rare that we're like arguing over should this joke stay in or whatever that is. Like it's usually just maybe we have a different idea of how a story should go, and then it's kind of whoever presses harder.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, just fucking go, fine.
But that's
figure it out.
cool. So, I mean, you guys have the ability to work together and not be separated by that, which is cool. Because I know
but it's not like it's seamless. It's
No.
there's a lot of tension sometimes, but then by the time when we finish it, we're like, oh, okay.
How long have you been writing
out.
together?
Since 2006.
I mean, most family business relationships don't last that long.
Yeah, I know.
That's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Great. You guys are like part of like less than 1%.
We haven't betrayed each other yet.
Which is crazy too. Like there's no money drama here. It's not like who's the comedian? Dane Cook, his brother stole all his money.
Oh, is that a thing? I didn't know that.
Dane Cook's brother was his accountant or manager or something, stole all of his money. You know, like you don't have any of
Well,
that.
we can't because we split paychecks anyway. It's like I listen, if I could figure out a way to
You can figure out a way to screw him. You would.
I
but,
would.
We'll talk after. We'll talk after. I got plans. Then we'll be really good friends.
then we'll officially be good.
That's pretty cool though. I mean, what's the reaction from people when they find out what you do? Do they feel like you have a real job, a dream job? Because I look at it, it's like this is pretty wild.
Think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but the thing is, it's like it's not always what it seems to be.
Well, I don't think people realize there's levels to entertainment.
Of course.
That they think, oh, do people assume you're really wealthy?
I have no idea. I think so, but I don't know what people assume. I think they assume that when you're a writer, you're always just getting you're always consistently getting, but that's not how it works at all.
We're still trying to figure out like how do you have so many Bugattis? That's the one. Like,
well,
how do you like? It's just so many.
Hot wire them and then you have them. It's not that.
It's funny. Anyone I know that's in entertainment, everybody assumes that they make a lot of money because it's entertainment and whatever. And I'm like, but you know that there's a lot of people that make very blue collar wages doing stuff. Like it's somebody's got to turn the light on and hold the camera, and
Well, that's part of the reason why there was a strike recently, is because there are so many of us, myself included, that are you get a job on a show or whatever the thing you're working on, and it's for a few months, and sometimes depending on the platform, they're trying to pay you a minimum, so you really have to string together a few jobs in order to make a decent living, in order to make your year.
So much like Fight Life, it's not even funny.
I get that. I mean,
people see me standing in the corner on ESPN, and they assume
yes,
and I'm like
that's a level of success, which it is in a.
It's a level extent. to make it to that level as a coach or an athlete.
Right.
It's an impressive feat, but it's not a lucrative feat by any means. The amount of money that we make as coaches with fighters, it's minimal. People don't realize how little we actually make to be there. And even with the fighters, I believe the number was 80,000 is the average UFC fighter's annual take home.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. But
a third string wide receiver who never saw the field for the Atlanta Falcons is making $1.3 million this year.
Yeah.
Yes. Fight Life is the same thing, where it is in a lot of ways is a creative endeavor. You have to go out there and you kind of have to write your story live in front of the audience. You got to entertain them and do the job, and you don't have the infrastructure that a lot of other sports have. And it's just you're kind of selling your talents fight to fight, and you develop a name for yourself and you develop a resume and you get more money over time, and and if you have a flop, you're back at the bottom of the heap again.
Yeah. Now you had a whole successful writing career. You haven't had that yet. Sorry, that's for next week's episode.
Yeah, next week.
Fighting career, and is there anything from your fighting career that you feel like you left on the table, that you wish you would have done? Or
no, I don't. I mean, maybe parts of my body I would like back because I've done a lot to myself. But no, I early on came to the understanding that for me to go beyond where I was at, it was a different commitment than I was prepared to make. I was clearly a journeyman. I was never gonna be a top tier world championship level guy.
Why would you say that?
Man, I don't want to go too crazy about it, but you do have to. If you look at the context of the time, let's say 95 to 2005 in particular, there was no drug testing.
Yeah.
And you had to be prepared to go a particular distance if you wanted to compete in the heavier weight classes. I mean, it was very difficult as a natural athlete to be successful.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I've always had an aversion to performance enhancing stuff, and I just a
because
long life
of
was
your
more important.
health, or because of
I was scared of what it would do to me long term. Fighting like
you don't care about cheating. It's just about you want to live.
No. So I wouldn't have. No, the cheating side of it, ding, funny. But I got you. But no, the challenge. You get to a point where you have to be real about yourself, and you've got to see how far you can go. I was comfortable with how far I could go, and I needed to get what I could get out of it. While
in terms of
for
financial
me,
stability,
no, for me, all of it.
Got it.
All of it. It was get the experience, see the world, make some money, make a lot of friends, have experiences that, most people don't. It was collecting experience at a very young age that the average person just doesn't have the opportunity to do.
I think that's part of the reason why, like, I've never fought even on an amateur level, but I'm so drawn to fighters like your story and people that have actually done it.
But the thing is, though, the saddest part about this, when I look at it now, the landscape has changed very much. When I was younger, you couldn't fight in the United States. There was no fighting like we have now. MMA didn't exist in the United States. Kickboxing was not popular in the United States. It's still not popular. But you have more opportunities to do stuff domestically than you do internationally now, where when I was coming up, it was all international. You had to go fight overseas if you actually wanted to fight. So now, going to New York or Pennsylvania or California, it's great to see the country, but the time in which I was at, you really saw the world.
Yeah.
You saw the world. And I feel bad for the COVID time athletes because there are a lot of guys that went to the UFC. I mean, okay, so with the UFC, we did Brazil, Russia, and a lot of stuff across the country. But during COVID, there's no Brazil, there's no Russia. I mean, they did the Abu Dhabi thing, but even that, you would have flown on a private jet to a bubble. Like, you didn't see anything. You fought in Las Vegas exclusively for a very long time, for like 2 years. That could be an entire pro career for some of those athletes. So there are guys that went to the UFC that never got that opportunity. So just when I was younger, I was in an interesting time where I got to travel more and I got to see the world.
Well, it's so interesting because you came up when I first started getting into MMA and just becoming interested in it. I would watch videos of anything I could find on YouTube of guys from like Bas Rutten and all those guys back in the day, and it was just a different sport. Everything was a little bit different.
But I'm even before
that time.
But I'm even before that because I had karate.
Right.
So I'm traveling with karate, and then I'm traveling with kickboxing, and then ultimately I'm traveling with MMA. So I'm not doing point karate stuff. I'm doing full contact karate. The only real opportunities for that were to go international and to do stuff. I mean, you couldn't do kickboxing for real. Dutch kickboxing, you said that here you say that in 1992, 3, 4, 5, everyone looks at you like, what the hell are you talking about? They don't even know that there's this Dutch way of doing it, that there's a Thai way of doing it. You say kickboxing in America and they think long pants with like American flags on them and shit. Like, guys doing the, was it Superfoot Bill Wallace? Because, I mean, here, again, no internet really. You're talking VHS tapes and Black Belt Magazine and Kung Fu Magazine. You're talking about magazine time. You're talking about the Big Apple movie. Maybe you would get the MSG. They would do like Lou Neglius fights from Long Island every once in a while. But you're not talking about this. And ESPN, they had the Strike Zone for a while. They had kickboxing on that. That's when Alex Gong became popular. So, it was just such a different time. There was just so little info. And it's funny, the original conversation we had, and we talk about this a lot, and the as a storyteller, I like to talk about the impact of telling stories because I think the formats in which we tell stories, the length of stories we tell, how we tell stories now is just so different than 10, 20, 30 years ago. And the impact it has on the developing athletes today and the fans of the sport is very different as well. So when did you start doing martial arts? Or when did you start having an interest in doing martial arts?
Let's see. I started doing martial arts in probably 2011.
Now, how did you find it? Like not the school that you went to,
right?
But what were you watching in 2011?
So a couple years prior, my brother and my buddy Mike, we would watch. We started getting into UFC events. We would actually. There were still video stores around.
Yeah, so you're looking
and I would
at
go
the
and
wild
I'd find these
tournament tapes.
Yeah, I'd find the wild tournament tapes.
Too dangerous for television.
Yeah, and it was like, and it was like Chuck and Tito and all of that stuff. And we'd watch, and we didn't know who had won them, so we'd bet on them, and we'd ultimately we were drinking, and we'd end up fighting each other. But then we became attempting to use techniques that we had no idea how to use them. That's how I got interested in it.
But that's the VHS tapes that you're getting from the stores. I mean, you should be able to go to Suncoast Video and you could buy them you could buy the Pride compilation for like $4.99 in the bargain bin. But I mean, think about it. So I'm doing this in the 80s. I'm going to the bookstore and getting a magazine. I'm getting a VHS tape in Chinatown from a bootleg store. When the internet came about, I was buying bootleg VHS tapes on eBay. There's no big library. You didn't get on your phone and say, what's this? And then find a whole thing about it. Like we would hear through the grapevine, hey, did you know there's a Thai furniture store that sells Lumpini Stadium fights out the back, and you could buy them for like $40. So I went on Mott Street to this store, and every Friday they would get a shipment of tapes. Then I would buy them, and then I started copying them and selling them myself on eBay so that I could buy more tapes. Uh-huh. And then I found a martial arts supply store in Chinatown that was selling Kyokushin videos, and they were selling the old ones from the 70s.
How old are you at this point?
I mean, I started doing this. I started buying tapes in the city like that. I mean, I was in high school when I started doing this. So I'm in my teen years, and I'm going into the city with my friends to go skateboarding. Then we would go to Chinatown, and we would go and like we heard through the grapevine there's a place that you could go buy these things, and we would go buy them. And then eventually became DVDs, and then
I love that.
And then the online stuff. But I'm buying from all over the world. I was buying tapes. I had a guy in Italy who was knocking off. Somehow he had some access to fight footage, and he was copying it and making VHS tapes. And my mom was doing business in Italy. So every couple months she's going to Italy. And I said, yo, you got to go to this guy's place because I don't want to pay the shipping anymore. She went to this random apartment building in Rome, and she became friends with the guy, and she would go. And every time she went, she came back with like 30 VHS tapes of fights that I was trying to find and stuff. Like wild times, man. Like totally different trying to find information. And then forget about now.
I love how you pimped your mother out.
Pimped my mother out. Well, my mind, I'm like,
fighting videos.
This must be like the guy must have a store. I'll never forget. My mom calls me and is like, yo, this is like an apartment in a shitty neighborhood. And I was like, oh, you don't have to go. She's like, whatever. I'll go see the city, whatever. My mom's crazy. I was like, I can't believe you went and did that. You could have died. It's
you
fucking
didn't
nuts.
I appreciate
she didn't have to. But if you're willing to, what the fuck? Go for it. But now, like, think about this from storytelling perspective. Yeah. So when we start off, we only had books in the magazine, so you're looking at picture sequences and you're trying to figure it out. Then you get the tapes, but you can't watch that in the gym. You're in your living room, like following along. And then we got the DVDs, and it was the same kind of thing because our TVs were gigantic. It's not these easy flat screens that weigh nothing. Do you remember how heavy TVs were?
Yeah.
They were gigantic.
Yeah.
And, with the VHS, you're rewinding it and whatever. We would watch them until they broke. That's basically what happened. And then, you have to remember everything. And then you would go to class and you would try and implement stuff. But you didn't have it with you. You're not watching it on the mat. Now, I mean, we have people with their phones on the mat looking at stuff in between rounds. They're watching leg lock videos.
I'll get to class and I'll think about, and I'm going to do wrestling or whatever. And I'm like, there's this takedown and I'll look at
Yeah.
like a Instagram video and then I'll go apply that.
And then the other side of it is like, so you started watching UFCs, you're watching the old ones, they're all tournaments.
Yeah.
So it wasn't one fight a night, it was 3 fights in a night.
Yeah.
You had 8 guys, and only one guy walked out of there without a loss. K1 was the same thing with kickboxing. It was 8 guys in the Grand Prix final, only one champion. So everybody took an L except the one dude. And it's the difference of that was that endurance was really important, because you had to have the endurance of consuming the content and trying to apply it, because you didn't carry it in your pocket. You're thinking about an event that was 3 fights in a night kind of thing. So you were like, man, I mean, I'm sparring 3 rounds in the gym and I'm dying. Holy shit, how am I going to fight 12? You know? So it was just a different time and a different focus, and it put a different sense of urgency on training overall, where I think now we have such easy access and everything is so clipped out that I think we look at it differently until we do it. When guys fight, they realize that 6 minutes of a amateur kickboxing bout is very difficult. It's not that 30-second clip. It feels like you ran a marathon in 6 minutes. Right. And it's very different. And I think it's the art of storytelling has changed. And I think that for the good and the bad, I think it.
Well, how do you see that it's changed?
Well, I think because it's so clipped out, and we don't have to sacrifice to get access to that information. I mean, shit, if you had the Rob Common kickboxing VHS series back in the day, you were like the hero at the gym. It was like you'd have a viewing party at your house for it. It was like the biggest thing. Now everybody has access to everything, and I think there's a different, I don't know, I don't know if respect's the right word, but it's a different connection with information. Information is taken for granted now, where there was a different sense of urgency about it. And there was a different sense of urgency at every level of it, because you were seeing it on pay-per-view. You were seeing it on ESPN. We weren't having this myriad of events locally. I mean, we have an amateur fight card every weekend in the state of New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York and wherever you are. There's going to be a fight somewhere. Where it was just such a rare thing. It was like watching a movie. When you saw Chuck Liddell, did you ever feel like you were going to cross this barrier where you were going to meet him one day or possibly be in his orbit?
No, not when I didn't know anything about.
But now everybody feels like, oh, if they track people down through their social media and have this sense of like, you see them in their living room. So it's like, you have a different connection with them. It's a more human connection with them, where they were literally looked at like movie stars.
Yeah.
You thought that fighting in K1 was like getting a blockbuster movie. You got signed by Hollywood if you were fighting at that level. It wasn't like, oh, you can fight and you have a good manager and you got there. Like, you had no clue how to get there.
Yeah.
Like, the gods of something were going to have to like bless you with access. That was the sense of it for the average person.
So then how did you think like, I'm going to make this a career. I'm going to figure this out? Like,
well, I'm a weirdo. I never had that. I didn't have that separation.
It's the same thing with me being a writer. It's like, well, I don't know how like you watch a movie or something, you see someone's name in the opening titles sequence, and you're like, they wrote it. To go from not being a professional writer to being a professional writer, that you don't know how that is possible.
So the only reason it was possible for me was because I never felt there was a barrier between me and anything I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I never had a problem with calling somebody up, going and tracking something down, showing up somewhere. Like, I've always been that way. Like, if I was interested, I would just go and do it. So
send your mom to go.
Yeah, send my mom to the slums of Rome to buy VHS tapes. But again, like, so I found out in Chinatown, okay, all right, so I'm like 14, 15 years old. I hopped on a train. I went to New York City and I went to Chinatown. I bought videotapes from a sketchy ass Thai store. It was like, that's what I wanted to tape, and that's just what I got to do. Like, but that's just how I was. I don't know why I'm this way, but I've always kind of been that way. Anybody who's ever fought for me, I'll tell you a million and one stories where people all get weird, and I'm just like, I'll go up to whoever's in charge of whatever we're at and just be like, hey, we need to do this like right now. You know, I need a chair, I need ice. You know, you need to put us over there, not over here. And I'm not being pushy. I'm just like, okay, we need to do this. I don't know why you're afraid to ask.
I get that. I think a lot of that confidence must come with you having been in this business for so long and knowing knowing when things are done correctly.
But I even did this in high school. I was telling a story last time. I read a book, and then someone told me the guy lived in New Jersey, and I went and got the phone book, and I called every Tom Brown in the phone book until I got the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah, you stalked.
I stalked him, and then found out that my biology teacher was one of his friends, and he said, go talk to your biology teacher, and then I ended up meeting the guy, and then I hung out, spent a summer at his Wilderness Awareness Society in freaking Pine Barrens. I met the dude and got to participate in the stuff I was reading about.
You spent a summer in the Pine Barrens?
Not living there, but I was going back and forth learning how to track and different stuff. It was pretty cool, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. But so for me, I would read in a magazine. I would read about the UFC. Yo, I sent my shit in.
Yeah. This is early. This is
UFC 1 happened. For UFC 2, I sent them my stuff. I just wasn't big enough. They were straight up, you're too young, you're too small. This is an open weight thing. These guys are big. I was 180 pounds, and they're like, yeah, you don't understand what you're asking. I didn't know.
That would have been wild.
I would have gotten fucking murdered.
Oh my
God. I would have been fucking murdered by these psychopaths
you would have
back
been
then.
more skilled than most of them.
No, not then. I was an idiot.
Oh, you weren't.
I mean, shit, man. What is that? 92, 93? Ugh. I'm 18,
you didn't have a lot of
I'm
skills
18, 19 years old.
Oh, okay.
Not
You
even
don't know what
that.
you're doing at that point.
I don't think anybody had skills in those fights either.
No, they
were horrible.
Didn't really, there were very few.
So, but I also think these guys were roided out of their skull and complete maniacs.
Right.
I mean, they got a very particular person to do that.
They're just mostly big maniacs. Yeah, that's really it.
I mean, I'm not Tank Abbott would have crushed me like a beer can and thrown me out of the octagon.
Yeah.
That was just a different time. You know, no matter what you thought you knew, it was that's just wild. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine competing in the UFC at that particular time. That was wild. But I mean, I did fight in makeshift rings and cages in random places during those times, and it was okay. It was appropriate.
Would these cages collapse as you're fighting in them, or are they that makeshift?
I fought in Bayonne, New Jersey, in a converted car garage that some dude turned into a gym, and then he would do this random show, and we did what they called shoot fights, which were just bare knuckle MMA fights in a boxing ring.
Yeah.
And the ring would shake every time you hit the ropes and shit. It was really wild. And then I fought in Brooklyn in a nightclub. In the back of a nightclub, they put carpet padding down and made a makeshift octagon thing. I fought in that. So crazy shady stuff. So shady.
I love this.
These are stories these are the underground fight days.
Do things like this happen anymore, or is everything
this
well
is
regulated?
Very regulated now. I mean, there's somebody in Ohio in a bar doing
I've heard of smokers, right?
They're illegal in most states.
When people, if a gym has a fight,
so I used to do
it's
them.
Kind of an underground fight,
but
right?
I did them when I had a big warehouse spot, and it was really hard to pay for the warehouse. So I was like, shit, let's do fights.
Okay.
And I had a 24-foot boxing ring, and we did kickboxing, and we did grappling bouts because you couldn't do MMA technically. So I said, okay, we did separate fights. We did kickboxing fights, and then we did straight grappling bouts. And then I got a call from the state because a promoter found out I was doing this and got pissed that I was doing these events in my gym, and they were like, hey, you can't do these anymore. And they told us not. But for a year and a half, we did events every month and packed the fucking house. And it was great. And those were a real smoker. Some nights we had winners and losers. Sometimes we didn't. It was literally just to give guys experience and for us to make money to pay the rent.
You know why they're called smokers?
That's a good one.
Really curious, yeah.
I have no idea why they use that term. Though that goes back to boxing. A smoker, that goes back to boxing. Those are the off-record fights. But then they started doing these. So New Jersey outlawed smokers. New York was doing them. I don't think they can do them anymore either. Then people were trying to do what they called exhibition sparring. That got shut down. The athletic commissions shut all this stuff down.
Okay.
So I do understand you always get a couple guys that just don't give a shit, that are just trying to make money and they don't care and they're reckless and how they went about it. When I did it, I had a doctor on staff. I had a deal with a local firehouse. They had a first aid crew there. We had an ambulance on staff. They volunteered to do it. They were like, "Can we watch?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Cool, we'll just park it there. We're good." No one ever got hurt. No one ever went to the hospital. Nothing bad ever happened at any of our events, which was cool. But there are guys that do these fights and they get out of control, and then they sell cups instead of alcohol. So then there's alcohol on staff, on presence, and people are getting drunk. Fights are happening in the crowd. People get hurt. Dumb shit happens. We always have tried to care about the athletes, so not everybody does. Some people just care about the dollars and cents, and it gets weird. And then the states have to crack down because they're like, okay, these guys don't have medicals, they don't have blood tests, you don't have brain scans, people get really hurt. So
Sure.
I'm sure someone's died somewhere doing this. It's you don't play fighting.
Right.
It's a real thing. Like you have
But
horrible consequences.
did you ever at any of these events you put on, like, have someone from the crowd end up like
Me.
jumping in a fight? Did you jump in a fight because somebody got hurt?
No. I actually had a guy drive in from North Jersey, and the guy he was supposed to fight didn't show up. And I was the same way as the dude. And
you would do this today.
I'm crazy like that.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there, and the guy's like, "Fuck, I really trained hard for this." And I was like,
Is he around your size?
"We're the same weight."
Oh, this is.
And I said, "Yo, I'm the same weight as you. You want to do it?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm like, we'll just make this exhibition." I didn't want to have a straight up fight with him. I said, "Let's just do an exhibition." He was an amateur guy. I'm a pro at this time and stuff too. And I was in terrible shape though, and whatever. So I said, "Fuck it." And I'll never forget. I was in the back, and I took my shirt off, and I said, "Fuck." Can I do this with my shirt on? I was like, oh, I'm such a mess right now. It's like I didn't shave my chest. I'm fucking fat. I went out and I played with the kid for the round. But we need a fight. So I said, fuck it, let's go. Yeah. I felt bad. The kid sold tickets and stuff. I didn't want to give him his money back. I didn't want him to feel bad.
But you also didn't want to like embarrass him.
And I didn't want to embarrass him. I threw one punch and almost killed him. And I was like, okay, this kid,
you could tell the level right away.
I was nervous because I'm like, yo, this is my house.
Yeah.
I don't know this kid. This kid could be amazing. And I have a lot of experience, and I don't want to look stupid. So I was a little concerned, and I went out there, and after the first couple exchanges, I was like, oh, okay, I'm good.
Right. I think you like.
Then I adjusted, and I was fine.
I was talking
and then we went to the distance.
One of the guys in the gym yesterday about that. That I think when you have a certain amount of experience, you can tell from the first few seconds, even in rolling as well, what level someone's at. So if you're not a fucking asshole, you can like calibrate that.
Absolutely. And you have to. And you have to foster an environment where that is the rule.
Yeah.
Not like the privilege kind of thing. Like that is the way it has to be.
Totally.
You have to look at everything as you can get a value out of every exchange kind of deal. I'll tell you a funny story. So, again, this is how storytelling will shape your opinion about things. So, I grew up watching all these Japanese full contact karate fighters. Then I'm seeing these amazing guys in kickboxing, all these Asian fighters, whatever. So, I'm part of this group organization called Seido. It's Seido Kaikon. It's a full contact karate organization that created K1. So they have a belt test in New York, and the guy who was in charge of the U.S. was somebody I was under, and his name was Arnie Soledel. He calls me up, and he's like, hey, I have an Ushideshi from Japan who I have to test. Can you come up and spar, like do the fighting rounds? Because so an Ushideshi is a live-in student. And he's like, yo, this guy is a live-in student from Osaka. He lives at headquarters. I'm like, oh, this guy's got to be a badass.
Yeah.
He's a live-in student at headquarters. I'm scared. And I'm like a high-level guy. I'm like a second-degree black belt in Seido at the time. This dude's like a green belt. But in my mind, he's Japanese, so he must have some kind of superpower. Mm-hmm. This can't be an easy day. And I'm nervous. And I drive out to Long Island. I'm literally twice the size of this dude. I'm decades deep into this art. This guy's probably been a year and a half.
Yeah.
He's literally like a high school student who didn't want to go to college and went to headquarters, and he cleans the mat more than he trains.
Yeah.
But I'm scared out of my mind. and they get us on the line, and you have to fight for rank. So you do this, you do all your technical stuff, then you have to fight. And at this particular test,
Did they needed a black belt, and that's why you're there? Or
he just needed this guy had to
someone.
fight 6 rounds,
Okay.
and he didn't have 6
He needed
fighters
another
to put
body.
against him. And so he was like, I need you to be one of the 6. So he puts me in the first position too. So I don't even see him.
Okay.
So I'm like first man up. I'm a second degree. He's a green belt. I'm like, okay, this Japanese dude can't fuck me up because I'm way higher ranked than him. My
Are
boss.
you wearing a gi?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
full contact.
So he sees
this
that
is
you're
like
black belt.
Yeah. I don't care. I can't see he's scared because I'm scared.
I
I'm
get
so
that.
scared. I don't know what to do.
Even though you see his belt. You
And
just
assuming,
superpower. Got
because
it.
like again, I think live-in student Japanese
Sure.
must be fucking Superman. So I'm like shaking. I'm so scared. And Arnie's looking at me like, what's fucking wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, let's just do this. And he says, go. And I come off the line. I run this dude over. I throw like a 3-piece combination, and this dude like flies off the mat.
Oh my.
And I'm like, oh shit.
So you ruined the whole test.
This dude, he did like an hour of work and then has to like fight, and it's kind of a formality. But I just blow the whole thing. I fucking blow this guy off the mat, and then he gets up because he just failed because I just knocked him out.
Know.
Wait,
Oh,
he
poor
gets
guy.
up, comes up to me and shakes my hand,
Why?
and he goes, "Thank you so much." And I'm like, "Come on, man." He's so respectful. He's like, "Thank you for the opportunity. I will try to do better next
Oh my
time."
God, you don't
And I'm just
deserve
like,
it.
"God damn it." And Arnie's just looking at me like, "What did you just do?
That's.
Why did you do that?" I was like, "You set me up." I got mad.
I mean,
was like,
he could have
afterwards,
given
like,
you more
"Dude,
information.
you set me up. Like, you could tell that I was gonna kill this guy. Like, why didn't you tell me? Like, chill out. Like, you gave me no info." He goes, "I thought you just would have known." I was like, "Dude, because all he did was tell me about how he was a live-in student in Japan and they just beat the shit out of him every day. So I'm thinking they brought a hammer in, and I'm like, he wasn't a hammer.
So he didn't go and fight any of the other guys because he had.
No, it was
already
over. He lost.
I feel bad for those other guys that had to come in.
Well, no, there were other guys testing too, and then I
Okay.
just played with everybody else, and then it made it even worse.
Oh my.
Because everybody else passed, and this poor guy who
Oh,
deserved to
my.
pass, I annihilated him because I was scared. Because of, like, again, storytelling screwed me up.
Well, communication, but yeah, that's storytelling, I suppose. That is
Like,
so funny.
I
mean,
it's so bad.
funny if you're not that guy.
I still feel bad to this day.
Oh, do you have any idea if you ever?
I don't know whatever happened to him. I think they sent him home.
Maybe.
Honestly, I think they sent him back.
Maybe that was for the best.
Yeah, well, no, he was never going to be a fighter, but he was just, I mean, he was just a good guy in the organization. Like, I don't know. Maybe he has a school now and has a picture of me on the wall and throws darts at it. Who knows? Maybe he watches the UFCs and goes, I know that shithead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I had the reverse happen to me. I had to fight for a rank. When I fought for my second degree in Switzerland, I had to fight 20 rounds for my second degree. And I'm in Switzerland, and we did this big seminar series there. So they have all the gyms in Europe are there. And so they put together 20 guys I got to go with. And I'm kind of measuring everyone. And my like 5th or 6th round was this guy with a yellow belt. And I was like, okay, that'll be no big deal. And so I kind of overlook it. And I go out, and this guy fucking plants me with a high kick. When I don't remember anything. This dude
Do you
fucking.
think he was really a yellow belt? Or
No,
he
wait,
just
I'll tell
forgot
you what happened.
his-
I'm looking at his
Okay.
belt, and I'm going, okay, this will
Yeah,
be easy.
yeah.
My hands are a little bit down. I kind of throw a lazy combo, and he just kicks my head off. And I staggered bad, and I don't remember like the next 5 or 6 rounds.
Oh my!
I keep fighting. I don't remember. I finished all 20 rounds. It was fine. But that one moment, and then afterwards, I remember my buddy Tomas, I go to him, I'm like, yo, what the fuck happened? He goes, bro, that dude's like a pro Thai boxer. I was like, what the fuck's he wearing a yellow belt? They're like, well, it's technically a yellow belt in karate, but, you know.
Oh, that's
I'm like,
so
God
funny.
damn it. And they're like, yo, you know that you gotta be prepared at all times. I let my guard down, and he took advantage of it.
Did you get knocked out from that kick?
He smashed me in the head,
Yeah.
and I watched the video, and I kind of like stagger,
Mm-hmm.
and I came back at him, but I don't remember the next like 5 or 6 rounds The next 5 or 6 guys I had to fight, I don't remember any of it.
Wow.
I kind of came to in the middle of a round. It was like kind of like a dream state going in and out.
Yeah.
And if you watch the rounds, you couldn't really tell there was anything wrong with me.
That's so interesting.
It was
just on
wild.
autopilot.
I've had a couple times. I had one fight. I remember they were cutting I remember being in the back, and I remember warming up, and then I remember they're cutting the tape off my hands, and I said, "What'd you do? Wrap my hand wrong?" And they're like, "What do you remember?" I'm like, "I don't. What?" I'm like, I'm all screwed up, and then it's dawning on me. I'm like, "Holy shit! I'm in a lot of pain right now." I fought, and I won. I had a kickboxing bout. I won, and they're like, "Yeah, you got clocked in the third, and we didn't know what was up." And I was like, "Yo, I don't remember anything to this day. I don't know any of it."
That's because there's no.
It's just whatever section of my brain that memory was, it collapsed.
I watched a video, I think it was on Instagram the other day, of kickboxing match. One guy gets knocked out brutally.
He starts fighting the ref.
No, that's
that
always,
happens too.
Yeah. No, he gets back. I
doesn't
think he was
realize it's
maybe
over.
through the ropes.
I
and
know
then
what
he
you're
gets
talking
up,
about.
He puts his hands up. He thinks he's
he
just
won.
starting the fight.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
he
yeah.
thinks he's just entering and like, here we go. He doesn't realize he's been knocked out and the fight's over.
Yo, they had a fight.
That's
I
fucked
saw
up
one
to
of those
watch.
too. A dude gets knocked out.
Yeah.
And when he gets up, he thought he won. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" The guy went down. They're like, "No, you went down." He's like, No, he went down." They're like, "No, you went down." And then someone literally pulls out a phone and shows him.
Oh my!
And then his head goes down and he walks out. Okay, so Karate World Cup, like 1995 Karate World Cup. It's was the precursor to K1. They did this big full contact fighting event. These Japanese guys would fight with no mouthpiece. They were nuts. And this one guy gets kicked in the face and his teeth just go flying out of his face. And then so the match is over. He gets knocked out. His teeth are gone. And he's walking out, and the referee taps him on the shoulder and gives him his teeth back. These were like the crazy Wild West days, man. The 90s were such a wild time with fighting.
But they certainly were. But do you think it wasn't like that in the 70s or 80s?
No, we didn't have
before that.
I think the 90s are a special time because strength and conditioning caught up with globalization of the sport.
Yep.
Better athletes coming into the sport. Steroids coming into the sport. Better strength and conditioning. Like, it was just this like
More of a perfect
weird
storm of
time.
all
Yeah,
these
it was a
things.
perfect time of evolution.
And all these sports are kind of being created. Like Dutch kickboxing, is created in the 60s, 70s?
I mean,
80s?
honestly, the 80s is where it really made its mark. I mean, the
Right.
70s is when. Okay, so Dutch kickboxing basically is where Kyokushin karate guys, which are full contact karate guys, start taking on the Thais. And they start fighting Thai boxing without really knowing Thai boxing. And they're winning with just pure aggression. They're doing amazing, but it was just such an aggressive style, but they're learning now. And then you have this mashing of Kyokushin and Thai boxing together. So now you have Dutch kickboxing. So it's basically the precursor to K1. They didn't like the clinch because they come from Kyokushin karate where there was no gripping, no clinching at all. So they took the techniques they liked from Thai boxing, the techniques they liked from Kyokushin, and they kind of made their own kickboxing style. And so, yeah. So Thai boxing in Holland, they don't really clinch that much. They box a little bit more. They throw kicks more like Japanese guys than Thai guys.
Yeah.
But they had this era of, they called it the wars, where the Dutch and the Thais were putting teams against each other back and forth. And that is really when the sport started to explode, because that's what brought kickboxing really to Europe on a bigger scope, because the Dutch did well. And, everybody likes a winner, so they're winning, so it grows.
Yeah.
They're
all giant dudes.
Yeah,
also.
I mean, they're Vikings.
Yeah.
They're descendants of people that, basically ate fish and yogurt and, traveled in boats and took people over.
Yeah.
It's
not in my
it's not my blood.
DNA.
I'm Irish, I come from famine people.
Good for you.
But, it's interesting. I could have like a really long historical conversation about how this stuff has all evolved. But yeah, Dutch kickboxing is not a long thing. And I mean, people think like karate is this ancient thing. Karate is not, as a Japanese thing, it's really like World War II time era. Judo is only like post World War II.
But I guess another reason why, like the '90s, why it all started blowing up, is that for so long, there would be certain fighters of a certain discipline that would travel around the world to show that their discipline was the best. And then by the '90s, a lot of mixed martial arts starting to really come and be a thing, right? Become like people are learning multiple disciplines.
Well, I mean, the problem in the beginning, and it's funny, I talk about this a lot with guys when we talk about jiu-jitsu guys. Jiu-jitsu guys that are my age, that are late 40s, early 50s, that grew up on UFC 1, 2, 3, 4, and they saw Royce Gracie. There was two responses to it. Some people saw Royce Gracie do it and said, okay, I have to go learn what he's doing because that's the master art. And then other people are like, how do I punch this guy in the face and don't let him grab me? There's different responses to it. Some people went one way, a lot went another. So a lot of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu people, they're and again, this all goes back to storytelling. Think about it. If you're in your developmental years as a martial artist, as an instructor, as a competitor, and you're looking at UFC 1, 2, and 3 for inspiration, Royce Gracie's the god to you. The Gracie families are the gods of fighting to you. Everything in your mind comes back to jiu-jitsu. Yeah, it starts on the ground, on its feet, but 80% go to the ground. If you go to the ground, if you don't have it, over and over. It's just ingrained in their head. Jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu. Doesn't matter if you wrestle. You take me down. You can take me down. Fine, I'm just going to submit you. Oh, you throw a kick or a punch. I'll just tie you up, take you down. Like, they just think, if I have jiu-jitsu, I'm good. And it's just so died into them. It's like they bleed these stories. They look at Hickson and Royce and all that.
Masters of branding. Like
amazing branding guys.
They still are.
I mean, the movie Choke with Hickson.
Yeah.
I mean, that turned him into a god. And if you look at the guys he fought a bobsledder, a shoot fighter he had 50 pounds on. He didn't fight anything great, but they told this story like it was like the greatest fighters of the world coming together to do this thing. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
But he's amazing. He's my favorite Gracie. I think he was.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was the best of the bunch. He was the game bred dog of the family. Like, that was. Yeah. He was the man.
He was a significant athlete. Like,
but what we were talking about with like how these different times affect us prior to the UFC. You didn't cross styles because you were told that someone would die.
Right.
Like, my karate and your kung fu could never mix because someone's going to death touch somebody. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't understand what the human body was able to endure because our instructors didn't want to lose the income every month because they had organizations and dojos and academies and they had to maintain their black belts and whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But if you think about it, though, most martial arts prior to like 1993, let's say, the majority of martial arts were led by people that maybe could demonstrate really hard and scare the shit out of you, but actually couldn't fight.
Yeah.
So you have this history of people putting themselves in dominant positions, not through actual fighting, but through demonstrations and terminologies and hierarchies and weird stuff.
Yeah.
And you were in fear of being demonstrated on, but like you weren't going to free spar with your coach and have to worry about getting planted. Like, you weren't in awe of actual applicable skill, but you thought you were, So it was just different. But again, it's everybody's communicating in a particular way for a long time. So we believe these things. But in other countries, this is here. In other countries, Japan, they're free fighting. I mean, karate tournaments in Japan were very different than what was going on here. You have full contact JKA, you have full contact Kyokushin, you have a long history of Thai boxing, you have a long history of Western boxing. In Europe, judo is the dominant sport. Judo is never an easy sport. That's the sport of picking someone up 6 feet in the air and slamming them on their back.
Right.
There's nothing easy about judo. Judo sucks. It's hard, man.
So hard.
You have you just get mangled in that sport.
Yeah.
But that's the dominant sport in Europe. Taekwondo in Korea was very different in, say, 1955 than it is in 1995 when it's an Olympic sport and it's different. Like, there were pockets of real shit going on, but we don't see it because, again, it's not being broadcast. It's I mean, we know movies in America.
You're talking about people that would demonstrate, and they would seem like, unbeatable badasses, but they're not really
Gonna
fighting.
fight.
So I'm curious what you think about the action stars that you grew up with. Who do you think is legitimate, and who's just like an actor who is just good at, movie fighting?
I don't know.
Let's take Steven Seagal. Was he a legit badass?
I can't
or
say
Van
the
Damme
guy's
or-
like a fraud. I've never locked horns with the guy. He's fat as fuck now. I
Yeah,
think he's
now he's-
just a caricature of a human being
he's-
now.
He's the best.
But
slash worst. But
I think he's a horrendous human being.
Not a
I
good
have
guy.
never heard a good story about the guy.
No,
I don't think he's ever done anything good for anyone but himself.
Yeah.
Ever, from what I've heard.
He sounds
horrendous.
just so bad.
But
like-
Judo Gene LaBelle, who's been a stuntman in the background,
Yep.
is like one of the godfathers of judo in the U.S.
Yes.
Like, and supposedly
Gino-
he beat up Steve Seagal. So
Exactly. And apparently was legit. Well, at the time, I think his nickname was like
it was Judo Gene.
was Judo Gene, and also something like the baddest man. No, the baddest man on earth is, or that Ken.
Something because he was
Anyway.
he was in like pro wrestling and stuff too. So he had weird names. But
yeah.
but like he was like a guy who did judo. Judo was a real thing. That was a real applicable art. Where Steven Seagal with Aikido and whatnot, that's a show art.
It's very hard to know.
The show art.
I know Van Damme had like 16 kickboxing matches before he got into
His real name was Van Varenberg.
less. Awesome.
It's not Van Damme, it's Van Varenberg. So that's why when people look up Jean-Claude Van Damme, you can't find a record for kickboxing because it wasn't his name. His name's Jean-Claude Van Varenberg.
That's interesting.
So like you could actually find, he had kind of American rule style kickboxing bouts, like the long pants kind of stuff.
Okay.
I don't know if he was any good or whatever. I mean, the guy can throw
Very
a kick,
flexible.
whatever. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have skill to be physical,
Sure.
but I'm not going to say you put this person in a competitive environment and they're going to be a world champ. I don't think so. I don't think any
It's
of
fun
them
to it's fun to
are.
think about, but there's no way to know. Unless, because a lot of these guys, I have no idea. I'm sure they came up training. Who knows if they competed?
Yeah, I think Hollywood ruins all of these people too.
Sure.
I mean, so in Hollywood, is it true how many people are there to like support these people? Like, do they become like really less human because they just don't do anything anymore? Like, there's just like an army of people that take care of these people when they start making real money as famous people.
Certain people, I suppose, I think like someone like The Rock must have an entourage with Mariah Carey. I know she's not an actor.
No, but
like,
you're entertaining.
they
I
have-
don't mean like
they
action
have
star systems.
entourages
Yeah.
who do everything for them.
And everyone
Um,
around you is just like kissing your ass because you're famous.
Yeah, but that's a certain level of like diva fame.
But even if you're a cult, like Jean-Claude Van Damme, I mean, really, he was never going to win an Oscar, but he had a big cult particular action following.
Absolutely.
Never made money like Schwarzenegger or Stallone either.
Yeah.
Like made money, but not like that kind of money.
I recently, the Schwarzenegger and Stallone. Do you know about their the rivalry when they were making movies?
Yeah. I heard, I watched a little bit of the documentary they did on it on Netflix.
Yeah,
And I didn't get deep on it. I fell asleep. But
well,
it was
like,
interesting.
I think one of them accused the other one of like using stunt doubles. I think Schwarzenegger accused, like in his movies, and then they'd each have to like kill more fictional bad guys in each
so
subsequent
crazy.
movie. So stupid.
But that's where like that fictional world that you're living in gets so weird. That's like these fighters getting into fights now, saying stuff to each other. Like Colby Covington comes out and just says complete and utter nonsense. And
is
it's
everything? Is he
nuts.
a complete fiction? Like everything he says is it just to be a heel? Like
basically,
he doesn't actually.
He's trying to sell
necessarily-
fights, man. He's trying
I know,
to sell
but
fights.
I don't think I feel like he went too far in a way where he's just not. He's not. He doesn't have the charisma that someone like Chael Sonnen
Anybody who
had.
follows me anybody who knows me knows that I talk about humanity a lot. And I think one of the problems is in anything, I don't think it's just unique to fighting. I think when you play a character too long, sometimes you can become that character.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of these guys, they start talking all this shit and it just becomes their shtick and it's just the way they start to talk. So in the beginning, it's like they're only that way on camera, and then they just never turn it off. Like Charles Sonnen, like I don't even feel like he's a human being anymore. He's a human clip machine.
Yeah, he talks just a little bit too loud. But he could like while seems like maybe a piece of shit too. He does.
I don't.
Occasionally, he seems like he'll say something that seems honest and is kind of right on, and I like that about him.
I don't think he has
sometimes.
a single bad intention in his body.
You don't think
I
so?
actually no. I don't think he has any bad intention. He's actually a pretty gracious guy. I've
Never met.
I've been at him with Bellators, and he's a very nice man. He shakes everyone's hands. He's very, very nice to the fighters, and he's very complimentary. He's the guy that's going to go up to someone that got their ass kicked and be like, "Yo, man, you're fighting on the largest stage in the world. Keep your head up.
Yeah.
Keep your head up."
So, I respect that about him. Colby does not seem like that
No.
type of guy. He doesn't seem like a real, like to have the depth. Of
He
character
goes through, but
that
he
Chael
goes,
had.
yeah, like Colby is such a caricature. If he says to me afterwards, "Hey, man, I'm just doing it to sell the fight," I'm like, "Yeah, you went too far. Shut up." Like,
It's just
stop.
not funny.
Well,
I guess
The most cringe for me was when Connor and Floyd did their thing. They literally went on a comedy tour together to promote the fight, and it was like who could up who in regards to like the shit talk.
Yeah.
And it just got so ugly, and it changed the sport in a lot of ways. And I think again, I always go back to storytelling because they changed how stories were told. We stopped telling stories and we just started talking shit.
right.
Like there's no like build up now. It's like, okay, they were in Detroit and he said this, and now
Yeah.
the other one's mad. And then they went to Boston and this one said this and he said that. And how did he respond to it? And okay, they're gonna fight now because they're both mad at each other because they said a lot of things.
Right. And it feels manufactured, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It's like
Sure.
okay, you're fighting over like schoolyard taunts instead of skills smashing together.
Yeah. I suppose there's some correlation between that and ratings or whatever.
I think at the
pay-per-view
time,
numbers, so
I think at the
maybe that's
time,
why.
but I think at the time it worked, but then I think it died off too. I think Connor talks now. I don't think Connor sells pay-per-views by the what he says anymore. I don't think anyone believes anything he says. I think that he has his fans that are baked in and they're looking for the miraculous comeback.
Yeah.
But I think $500 million kind of ruined him.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably one of those people who has, just like the Hollywood people you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. And
has
you know, it's
everyone
really
been
funny.
before.
So I had a discussion with somebody the other day about this, and as a coach, it's real. So I have a guy in front of me, and the longer we're together, sometimes you don't get complacent, but sometimes you lose sight of where you're really at anymore. If you're not really interacting with the world consistently, sometimes you don't see that your guy's degrading because they're so great to you.
Sure.
And you're not like, when we started, you were sharper than you are now. You see the money, and you're fat too now because you're making more money as they make more money, and you have more fame, and you have more whatever. So you're getting soft too, and you don't realize that the two of you are getting soft, and you're still acting like it's 5 years ago. You're still acting like you were hungry in your head, but you're living soft, and you don't see it. You're both kind of degrading at the same level, and that's why it's important that you have young scrappers in the room to keep you grounded so that you maintain a youthful mentality about the process and you don't get old with your fighter.
And that's why you bring me in, because I have nothing to fight for, so I'm always trying to prove myself.
You know, we've been talking to kind of like roll this back around to the gym and training and us, and like one of the cool things about this is that Killer Bee gives a opportunity for us to come together at different stages of our lives over a common bond of training and wanting to just be better at this thing. And then we find stories like we're telling about our lives, and there's a lot of commonality in that. Different universes, but creative paths. Having ideas of where we want to go, not really knowing how to get there, but figuring it out. You know, it's very interesting stuff. And then, how old are you going to be?
I'm 44.
You're 44. I'm going to be 50. Neither one of us are going to be UFC champs. Sorry to tell you that. But we have the ability to get on the mat and work with these young guys and be a part of these wild adventures.
Yeah.
And actually be a part. I mean, Kevin is like 24-year-old dude with a kickboxing bout coming up. Jalen's a 25-year-old dude with a kickboxing bout coming up. They're looking at you as like an invaluable person because you're one of their main sparring partners.
Yeah, no, I love doing it for that reason. I get to. I don't have the space in my life for the anxiety that goes into actually competing, or nor do I have the time to get ready for all of that. But I love to get these guys ready and test myself to a certain degree without like going, trying to knock going that hard.
But you get the joy part.
Spirited.
But
I get
you
all
get the joy.
part.
You get all the joy.
Get all that.
All the joy.
So it's great for me. I love it.
And I think that's the coolest part about it is that we've created this opportunity to make it accessible. The NFL is a non-accessible sport.
Yeah.
You're not going to walk into a football training environment and find Tom Brady there to have a catch with.
Yeah.
But Hamdi Abdul-Wahab, a heavyweight in the UFC, will come in and teach class on a Wednesday night.
I know. It's pretty amazing that
right?
the sport is unique in that.
Yeah, and that's where it makes it so accessible, and it makes it more human that way, and it obliterates the barriers that we've been talking about. Like, as much as these guys are superstars in the sport, they're just people to us, and I think it's good for them too.
Yeah,
because if you want to be a superstar, sometimes you lose sight of the athlete you need to be the superstar. And I think you just have to be who you are first, and you have to be the athlete that you need to be to maintain the career, and whatever that brings, it'll bring. And, just grounding it by having, people like us there to participate with you and keep you grounded, I think is just really important. And I think the opportunity for us is just so much fun. Just so much fun.
Best.
It really is like this just wild ride every day, because we can remember what it was like to be that age, and we can smile when we see the opportunities that they have.
Yeah.
And that, like, for me, that's the joy part, is that I'm not living through them. I get to be a part of people taking advantage of opportunities more successfully than maybe I was able to because of my experience now. And then seeing that they have the ability to pass that on. And I think the experience thing is what it's about. And that's why I like to have these conversations, because you bring your life, you bring your experience, and you get to share that with these guys. And they look at you and they ask you questions about your career, and as much as you're curious about what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And it's just that constant exchange of information and accepting of who we are and trying to figure out how do we fit all that together to make the most productive environment is what Killer Bee's all about. And what's cool. And that's why I guess at this point I could say, after talking to you, you're my good friend now.
Well,
I know. I think I ruined myself with you. I think I actually knocked myself down a peg, but you're up a peg with me. So we'll have to talk again so I can redeem myself in some way.
Because this probably didn't record. So
yeah, I know. Jeez, there's at least
no, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you about the fight business, the entertainment business, or
As a writer, do you feel that you're very God, I had the word and I just lost it. Are you always interested in other people's stories?
Yeah.
Are you a really good listener?
I try to be, but yes, and if somebody has an unusual job or something, I will ask a lot more questions than they're probably comfortable with.
And as a comedy writer,
yeah,
are you just looking for an angle to laugh off of everything?
Not necessarily. I feel like I'm just a person who's just, I don't know. I think I don't know how to answer that exactly. I don't know. Do
you find uncomfortable situations funny?
When I'm in them, they're uncomfortable, but I love to write characters into uncomfortable situations.
Interesting. So you look through a different lens.
Yeah. Although, like,
a dark twist.
Without getting into it, last night was a wild night at the gym. It was a little uncomfortable. I loved every second of it. I thought it was just like, what is going to happen? And it was just, it was really interesting. And actually, the way it played out was kind of beautiful.
It was.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too crazy into it, but someone had a little bit of a mental breakdown due to a misunderstanding. and it was like an honest misunderstanding. They thought they heard something that was never said, which led to them getting upset. And then once I honestly, all I had to do to diffuse that, I was like, stop, take a deep breath, listen to me. Do you understand that we trust you to hear the truth? And you have to trust that I'm going to tell you the truth.
Right.
And then we have to let whatever weirdness is going on in everyone's head leave.
Yeah.
Shake hands, trust, and be cool.
Yeah.
And it happened. It was cool.
There was a lot of self-awareness on his part as well.
Yeah.
So it was
great.
But anyway, my point is like, I found the situation to be weird and potentially volatile, but also like I wasn't
Put a little
worried,
color in the day.
But it was it was
Put a
very
little color in the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jay was like, "Were you nervous?" Like, about what?
Yeah, what was gonna happen?
What?
What's gonna happen?
What's gonna happen? Like, you watch too many movies.
Yeah.
This is real life, guys.
Was Jay nervous?
No, he wasn't nervous. He was concerned that it was going to get out of control.
Well, you just never know.
It could have.
You never know.
It could have if we escalated, but we didn't escalate because we just were like, "Nah, let's."
Also,
go to
we didn't just let it. I was thinking. I love the circle thing that you do at the end of the class when people talk about, what they worked on or what someone else.
Well, you
could
call
work on
everybody
better.
out.
But I think that being part of the routine was a way for the situation to diffuse itself.
And I
it was
said to
great.
Tristan today, because Tristan's the best. He calls everything out as he sees it.
He did.
As it's happening, he calls it out. He's not the guy that's going to text you later and tell you something. If he has something to say, he's going to say it. And that, it started it, and then everybody communicated, and it cleared the air, and it was fine. Because it legitimately was just a misunderstanding of things. And it was, you have testosterone and sparring and things flying around, and like shit gets out of control sometimes. But it was handled appropriately, and nobody got hurt. And I think legitimately it led to everybody being better, and that was the point. So
Yeah. I'm awesome.
John, how can we? What's a project of yours that we should see to see the greatness of you as a writer? What's your best project for us to look at? What do you think is a fine example of your work?
Oh, it's hard. I mean, I don't know. I've written on a lot of shows. A lot of them are shitty shows. I can't take credit for all of the shittiness because they're not my shows. They're just shows
Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
But Always Sunny was a great
Season
show.
2, Episode 1. No.
Well, so I have. If anybody would be interested, which my brother and I wrote the script for Charlie Catches a Leprechaun, season 11. I don't know what episode it is, but
right.
It's a St. Patty's Day episode. Anyway, but we did a lot of writing on other episodes and stuff. But
you should clarify that with me so I can actually post that as a sub note to this, like that episode. But how, if anyone wants to follow you, how would they follow you?
You don't have. I'm not really. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but I don't really.
See really adorable pics of your children.
Yeah, that's. I mean, if you want to see that, that's what people go there for.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and they're great pictures.
All right, so throw it out there. What's your Instagram handle?
I don't even know.
See, don't even know.
I don't really participate in.
I am on Instagram.
Social media at all.
I have no idea how to find me. That's great.
Yeah. My name's John Jon Silberman with a B, as in Bravo. Brian.
All right, you
Awesome.
can find me at on basically everything at Killer B CSA. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're killing it on TikTok right now.
Fantastic. I don't have.
Yo, last time I
TikTok.
threw. You want to know what's crazy? Okay, what platform do you think we have the most amount of followers? You may know, so you're gonna.
No, I have no idea.
Freaking Facebook.
Oh.
Killing it on Facebook. I didn't know when people even went to that anymore.
I don't.
So Killer B CSA on Facebook right now. I have multiple videos with over 100,000 views on them.
Wow.
Because everyone thinks I'm Gordon Ryan. No joke. Number one comment.
You gotta shave your
old man Gordon
everything.
Ryan. Yeah. Well, or I just start posting things about how I'm going to retire because my stomach hurts.
Wait, do you really think that has some sort of effect?
100%. Because if I'm doing a grappling, all my jiu-jitsu videos all have high views because people see the gray beard and the gray hair and they think it's Gordon Ryan.
Yeah,
it's hysterical.
Worked out really well.
Two Jersey guys, two guys from New Jersey.
Okay.
Which is weird. We drive the same car.
Okay.
And both of our women are basically into bodybuilding.
Wow.
How weird is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. But he's only 28, so Maybe Gordon. Maybe I'm not Gordon Ryan. Maybe Gordon Ryan's pretending to be Brian Wright.
That makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense. I came
Yeah.
first. So follow me at Killer Bee CSA on everything. We are Killer Bee Combat Sports Academy. John is a valuable member of our community, and you can find him weekly participating and helping the team out, doing his thing. And yeah, this is the Hive Podcast. We appreciate you for listening. You can find us at thehivecast.com. We're everywhere, tune in, all that stuff. Play Store, iTunes. You can download the audio version of it. And as always, you can find this on YouTube. So, John, I really appreciate you coming in. This
Pleasure
is The
being here.
Hive. We are out.